Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Tactical Dad podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Cook, and I am the Tactical Dad. We are dealing with a dodgy microphone, so the audio may not be as good as previous podcasts. Somehow it broke in my bag, so got it out a few minutes ago, and there was a rattling sound. So, sorry, but until I get a new one, there's going to be a few episodes just like this. I've ordered the new one already, so we'll see. Today's episode 52, we're going to talk about how to hit your target every time, zero in your rifle scope. So zeroing your rifle scope. Pretty important element of the whole rifle scope and optics deal. So what is zeroing a scope? And zeroing a scope or a sight, whatever words you use, refers to the process of adjusting the aim point of the scope so that it lines up with the point of impact of the bullet. Essentially, the idea behind zeroing is to make sure that where the crosshairs and the aim point, or your aim point in general, is pointing is where the bullet is actually going to hit. Because if you just throw an optic of any kind on your gun, or whatever gun you've got, and you don't zero it in where the crosshairs are, or the red dot, or whatever it is that you've got pointing, is most likely not where the bullet's actually going to hit. I found this before I even really knew about zeroing in things. So that's what zeroing a scope is. Basically to get your point of aim to match your point of impact with the bullet. That's essentially it. So, for example, when you look through your scope, you'll see the reticle, the crosshairs, which represent the point of aim. But when you fire the gun, the bullet might be a little left, right, up, down, combination of them all. Like, it's going to be something. So by zeroing the scope, you're adjusting the scope so that when you look through and you align the crosshairs with your target, the bullet is going to hit that or pretty close to that. It's something that you should just learn to do it on your own. If you own a gun, you should learn to do this. Because one, you just never know when you're going to have to adjust it. So rather than having to rely on a gunsmith, my phone is blowing up right now. Instead of relying on a gunsmith or a friend or family member or anyone other than yourself, just learn to do it. I am, and I'll post some videos on me doing it and learning it, and I'll share how bad my first one was, and I'll share how good my last one was, and I'll just keep sharing future ones, because it's not easy. It's simple and easy to understand. But when you're actually doing it, I got this like device that you sit the gun on, so like it holds it more stable. So it's helpful, but it's still not super easy. So I'll get better at it. It requires patience. This is a process that does take a bit of time, and it can be finicky. So you need patience to do it. It's done by shooting at a target at a distance, usually 100 yards. That's common for zeroing a rifle scope, but on the other side of things, it depends if it's a rifle you're doing, and it depends on like the specific distance that you regularly use that gun that you're zeroing the scope on, and the intended use of it and stuff. So because there's going to be a difference, short to mid-range shooting to long-range precision rifle shooting. So there's a difference. So it depends on that largely, like almost everything in this world. But it takes time, need patience. Essentially, you're just making sure the point of impact and the point of where the dot or the crosshairs are pointing is where the bullet actually hits. That's essentially what zeroing a scope is. We're going to talk in another episode. I've lined it up. I can't remember how many in front of this one it is. but I've already made the notes and the outline of the podcast. We're going to go into some more details and specifics of zeroing a scope, because there's a fair amount to it, and can get, as I was talking through the podcast, it gets kind of complex and complicated. Even confused the crap out myself at some parts of it. So let's save it for another episode, because we need a bit more time. We're already through this podcast 5.5 minutes, so we'll end here. Just me going over a general outline for zeroing a scope, which is set up a target at a distance, usually 100 yards. It's pretty common. Fire a few rounds to get a general idea where the bullets are hitting, and then adjust the elevation and the windage knobs on the sight, or your scope, whatever you want to call it, until the. So adjust those elements, windage and the elevation. Move the point of impact. They're moving the point of impact up and down. Move it left or right. Wherever you're seeing the point of impact, like, you got to bring the target back in or walk to it, depending on where you're at doing this, and just check for where the point of impact is. Go again, adjust again, go again. Just keep doing it until you are finding the point of impact is pretty close to the point of aim. And that's very general, broad, quick overview and outline of steps you take to do that. But that's it. That's all from me today. Thanks for joining me. We'll talk more about zeroing in a sight or a scope in another episode. Can't get my words out. Have a good day. Thanks for joining me. See you again soon.